Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. I hope everybody's joining us from a safe and healthy place. We know that you're joining us from many parts of the world, and if you're not joining us now live, you might be watching this in a future time, in a future place, in a different part of the world. But we look forward to sharing our time with you today in a interesting and fun way. We're going to be a little bit conversational, not too scripted, and as the way that our program runs, a little bit improvisatory, and look forward to sharing the next hour with you as we discuss our program and address any interesting questions you might have for us. So I'm going to begin the presentation now by acknowledging that we are on the UBC Vancouver, and Faculty of Forestry sits on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. And that's a very meaningful statement for our program. At its most basic level, our program is about furthering the cause of justice for people and forests. So for here in BC and thinking internationally, it means a lot to us. So you're looking at a picture here of a totem pole that's a reconciliation pole. So reconciling the past injustices to the First Nations of Canada, especially here in British Columbia. Addressing those questions at a global scale is also what we're focusing on as a program. So I'd just like to set that tone for us today. So today you're going to meet some of the interesting cast of characters that participate in the MIF program. That's the Master of International Forestry program. So on the left there you have Intu, then you have Terry and Rebecca, and then we have Lee, and I'm just going to ask them to say a few words about their roles and that they play in MIF and outside those bounds too. So go ahead, Intu.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. So my name is Intu Bodihartono. So I'm the director of the Master of International Forestry in this Faculty of Forestry. My background is an anthropologist, but I'm not a forester, but we are very much valuing people with a lot of different background and diversity of field coming to the program. So hopefully I'll see you in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Intu. Go ahead, Terry.
Thanks, James, and yeah, welcome all. I'm Terry Sunderland. My background is in horticulture, botany, anthropology, forestry, a bit of everything really. I teach on the MIF, a course called Natural Resource Planning, which is focused mostly on landscape scale science and both social and ecological. And I'm also the Director of International Cooperation and Engagement at UBC, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program, as it were.
Thank you very much, Terry. And to my left here is Rebecca, my partner.
Hi, my name's Rebecca. I'm from Australia, and I'm a postdoctoral fellow here at UBC. I also teach in the International Forest Governance and Policy course. My research is a lot about what you learn about in the MIF, so landscapes, small forest enterprises, and definitely considering these issues from a global perspective. So we have partnerships with organizations in Cameroon, Indonesia, Cambodia, and in British Columbia as well. So I look forward to meeting you all.
Thanks, Beck. And next we have Lee.
Thanks, James. Hi, yes, I'm one of the admissions coordinator for the Forestry Professional Master's programs. Julie Morey is actually the admissions coordinator for the MIF program, but unfortunately she's away this week, so I'm happy to answer your questions about admissions and how to apply for our program.
So that just goes to show, thanks Lee, that we're a healthy team in the Faculty of Forestry. We all cooperate and work together. So next we have Abby, a current MIF student.
Hey, I'm Abby. Yeah, I'm a current MIF student. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I have a little bit of a background in political science, and conservation, and education.
Thanks, Abby. And Vaishali sitting next to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vaishali. I'm from India, and I have a background in life sciences. I have a master's in environment management and a little bit of remote sensing and GIS. Before joining MIF, I was working with Wildlife Institute of India, and I see MIF as something that, as a stepping stone for my PhD, and I'm enjoying here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vaishali. So last you see me, that's James Langston. I haven't actually introduced myself yet. So I'm the MIF program coordinator I also teach into this year. I'm teaching into social, community, indigenous forestry. And I also teach into the natural resource economics and conservation finance class. But in general, I'm just sort of an ever-present part of your experience. If you're part of MIF, I am sort of work with Into as the director, and I'm the coordinator, and I sort of like to be involved as many ways as I can. So it's a pleasure to be with you today. So just to quickly run through, I don't like outline slides, but it's best for these sorts of presentations that we keep on track. So we'll talk a little bit about Vancouver, Canada, British Columbia, the context here, what our program's about. We'll hear from current and past students, alumni, and then you'll get to hear more of the details on how to apply, questions of tuition and funding. And we hope mostly that we'll spend our time discussing with you through a Q&A session. So firstly, this is a nice picture of downtown Vancouver. Vancouver is they like to say that's the 6th most livable city in the world. The Economist rankings has put it that way for the last 10 or 15 years. It's a major reason for which is its close proximity to very desirable nature. Look at those mountains, the forests that surround us. It's a beautiful scenery, beautiful mountainscape. You can see here downtown Vancouver is defined by this inlet that's very walkable. It's a nice place to live. It's about a 20-minute drive to UBC campus from that downtown, and about a 35-minute bus ride from that downtown to UBC campus. And it has a world-class public transportation system. Here you see the campus of UBC. And it's on this little peninsula, and it's surrounded by a Pacific Spirit Park forest, which was just yesterday hit by a tornado, but most of it is still standing, and it's been standing there for the last 150 years, and it's a nice part of the campus. Here you see Woodward Library, which is one of the 11 libraries on campus. It's a very lively and thriving campus, and it's got a lot of greenery. It's got about 67,000 students. So it's one of the world's larger universities, and UBC Vancouver houses about 56,000 of those 66,000 students. Getting to the Faculty of Forestry building. The UBC Faculty of Forestry is ranked 3rd in the world for forestry, in the top 3. I wouldn't say 3rd in the world, in the top 3. And I'd arguably put it at number 1 in the world. It's certainly for its size of faculty and for the sort of diversity of teachings that goes on and research that goes on in the building. Over 1,500 students, of which over 300 are graduate students. Well-supported faculty, because we are fulfilling UBC's commitments to attract and support people who have the drive to shape a better world, which is aligning with UBC's vision to inspire people, ideas, and actions for a better world. Very global in its outlook and outreach. And I've really got a personal sense, having been here for the last 3 years, that the Faculty of Forestry is a committed community and team that really came together through COVID and worked to solve some of the immediate problems and innovated in doing so. So it's been a pleasure working with the Faculty of Forestry so far. So this is the building in which our program is housed, the Faculty of Forestry building, which is the Forest Science Center. It's a bustling place. That's called the Tree House, where a lot of students like to hang out and work together and collaborate on their, both socially and formally for their work. So we are one of 4 professional master's programs housed at the Faculty of Forestry. We've got our program, the Master of International Forestry, among others, and others focus more on sort of more discrete aspects of forestry. So geomatics is much more about remote sensing and GIS. Urban forestry, of course, is a big growing field as the world urbanizes rapidly. And there's Master of Sustainable Forest Management, which is sort of a program about producing professionals that get their registered professional forestry degree that you would need as a forester in Canada. So I'm going to talk about our program today. We are going to talk about our program today. You know, what goes into a name? Master of International Forestry, I guess it conjures up maybe different ideas and concepts for different people. For us, it could easily have been named a Master of Sustainable Development in Forestry, or Master of you know, Conservation and Development Trade-offs in Forestry. So we really take a broad view of what the issues are for forestry, and we put forest, I guess, central to the idea of sustainable development. So this statement that our program provides the knowledge, skills required to address the social, environmental, economic challenges is really about putting forests in that context of the pillars of sustainability. And when I say we do this in a way that addresses those challenges, our way of teaching, I think, is different. We think that the way we teach is as important as what we teach. So we sort of engage in a lot of peer-to-peer learning and have a lot of connections and networking that goes on in the program, so that it's more about experiential learning through tacit knowledge transfers. So it's probably a different program to most professional programs. The program's about 10 months in length. I say about because it varies depending on the student's needs at the end. The first 8 months are all classes, right? You're with us in UBC, but not necessarily sitting in the classroom the whole time. We have a lot of enriching field trips, which you'll see in a minute. But you finish the program with a 2 months mandatory directed study, placement, or project, otherwise known as sort of an internship. And that needs to be a sort of a minimum of 2 months. I put the asterisk there because some people like to spend 6 months doing an internship, and that's fine. But as long as you, by the end of those 2 months, have submitted something that we can say that you've completed at least 2 months in an internship and grade you, and you can complete your degree, then we're happy. So what you learn in the MIF, it's very, I'd say it's a good blend. It's a mix of theory and hands-on experiences, and I like to break down that boundary between the two. So we think that all theory needs to come from practice and not the way around, other way around. So here's a picture of us in Tofino, where the famous Clayoquot Sound War in the Woods happened, which was a big turning point in the history of forestry in BC, where through the war in the woods, values of forests that were not just timber related, but other conservation values and social values became more prioritized. And today you see a legacy of that in that landscape. We cover a wide range of things here. Forest and Society is probably a keystone class that bridges lots of other classes. So from social, community, indigenous forestry to the more hands-on integrated natural resource management that Terry's in charge of. And we really think of these classes as not being siloed from each other, but all being complementary to each other. And you would learn a lot of similar things in the different classes, but the ways in which we talk about them might differ. And we think that's a strength of our program. So in essence, I'd say a lot of what you learn with us is more about the how we learn and less about the what, because the what is changing every year. I'd like to say that I never give the same PowerPoint presentation or lecture twice. Every year things are changing, contexts are changing. This year, Terry's joining us from London, where he's just been at Glasgow at COP, and he would be bringing a lot of what he's observed back to the classroom as he returns next week. So we think of this program as being problem-based and sort of transdisciplinary in its approach. So you've got a very rich set of human resources that contribute to the program here. And these are all people that you could contact, and they have their names here with some of the international organizations with whom they work. So as we are an international forestry program, you can see all the international alphabet soup that follows everybody's name there. But it is a strength of our program that we are so plugged in and well embedded in some of these international forestry networks, and not just forestry, but organizations that affect forests and have a stake in forests. So if you were with us, this is what your schedule would look like. From September to December, you would be in classes. Then you'd have a break, and then you'd have a different arrangement for your classes. You'd have these 3-week-long intensive, one course at a time classes. So from January to April, you'd have essentially a month dedicated to one class at a time, and you spend each day with every day of the week with somebody in charge of that module. At the end, following April, is when you'd start your internship, and you'd get involved in your directed study or placement. And we like to not draw too many lines between what that means. So a directed study and a placement, we like to think of ourselves as lifelong learners. So we think that everything can be framed as an internship or a directed study, and more or less formalized along those lines. And what you come out with as you come through this program, there are certain skill sets. We don't necessarily agree with the idea of having very discrete learning outcomes, but we think that you're better equipped to make better decisions over forests than other people would by having come to our program, as we take a very broad view, but a very clear focus and sharp focus of some of these issues. So some of the things relate to natural resource management here. We're very invested in this idea of landscapes and landscape approaches to managing forests, and the values of natural systems and human systems, and social ecological systems, the idea that there's not a boundary between the two, and a heavy focus that distinguishes our program from perhaps other professional forestry programs is this sort of governance and policy angle that we emphasize. So taking better decisions is what governance is all about. It's not just government, it's all sectors of society. So we think that we emphasize heavily the policy and governance side of this program. And of course, breaking into the international forestry scene is what we think that we can offer you as we're well embedded in some of these networks. So right now, I just want to get into some of the more rich sides of our program. So the more fun and interesting aspects. So I'm going to sort of hand the ball over a little bit now to Abby and Vaishali, who will move through a few slides here. But these are going to be pictures that describe the way that we operate as a cohort. And it's not just sitting in a classroom with each other. So Abby and Vaishali, I'd like to ask for you to take over, and you can tell me to move the slides along as you see fit.
Sounds good. Yeah, like James was saying, a lot of what we do is in the field as well. And so far in this program, we've been able to visit a few different learning landscapes, which I think has really given us a fuller picture of these multi-stakeholder situations and how they can play out in real life. We kind of hit the ground running with field trips, but I'm really thankful for that. Pretty immediately, we were given these chances to relate the material we read for class to local landscapes throughout BC. And these experiences have introduced us to the depth and complexity these situations have. It sparked a ton of questions for me, but it's also humanized a lot of these ideas, especially the idea of stakeholders, which we talk about a lot. We've gotten chances to speak with people from industries and community forests, local governments, private business, First Nations, and learn what their values are in connection to forests.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that what made it more effective was how well these field trips were organized, and they fit so well together with the curriculum. And speaking of this picture here, all of us there were so absorbed and moved by all the stories and experiences shared by the First Nation communities. And we can never find something like that in any peer-reviewed articles. And MIF is truly about learning by doing. And it's been only 2 months, but I'd say that these experiences are worth more than that. Next slide, please.
So in the field and in the classroom, the people we've met with have been able to express to us their history and kind of shared hopes and goals for the future, as well as difficulties they face in achieving these outcomes, which really breathes life into the papers we read and concepts we discuss in class. Each individual or group that we've talked with has been really generous with their time and in sharing their knowledge and answering our questions. So through meeting these people outside the classroom and inside the classroom, we've been able to really kind of start to piece together their knowledge and insights into a fuller picture of what international forestry can look like in action. And luckily, we've been able to do this while having a lot of fun together.
Yeah, and I've cooked, canoed, and had classroom discussions with Abby and others in the class. And again, it's not only from our peers and case studies, but also from the professors and invited guests. They have a lot of experience working across the world, and which makes it truly international forestry. Next slide.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that everyone's knowledge and different backgrounds are valued in this program and that we get to learn from each other all the time. Each student has a different lived experience through school, work, culture within their own communities. So you don't have to look very far, like literally right next to you, to learn something new. Recently, in a few of our classes, I've been able to work with Vaishali during these group discussions, and hearing her background and understanding of communities, biodiversity, and forests really elevated the dialogue for me and made it interesting.
Yeah, and in this picture, we were learning about network analysis for stakeholders and understanding social networks in Cambodia. And we do several such group exercises together. And it was interesting how each of the 4 different groups came up with some unique perspectives for the same problem. And what we accomplish as a group is always so much better than what we could do in silos. And also, as you see in the background, there are some Halloween decorations. So we are a group that also celebrates together.
Well, thank you so much, Abby and Vaishali. I like to think that we are all doing this because we find this fulfilling, and part of a fulfilling job means we have fun together. And I'm glad that we've set the tone and that's working well for you. So thanks for shedding some light onto how you see our program. So I'll now move on a little bit to some other pictures of what we do as a group. And I'll ask Professor Intu Bodhihartono, the director of the program, to talk through some of the next slides.
So thanks, James. So yeah, again, I think it is very important to really say that forest is an important part of the landscapes, right? So we are here all to understand the whole system, basically. And as Vaishali and Abby was saying, we're trying to do a lot of the things also outside of the classroom. So it's all about sharing knowledge, listening to others, and also understanding different values and the different culture in all these different landscapes, right? So here we are with a First Nation carvers that covered, and then we visited their places and their atelier, or their art studios, and we are also interested in the use of art and different kind of culture that are related to the forest and the landscapes where we go to. So, next, please. So, and we also talk with a lot of the different stakeholders in the landscape, meaning it could be a private sector, it could be also the local government in that area. And actually, a lot of the students have also a lot of different experience from their home country. So we have mostly mid-career students, but there are also young graduates. So the exchange of knowledge and the sharing of this knowledge, it could be very enriching for everybody. So this is in Squamish, where we visited a company. Yep, next please. So this one is also, we do take students overseas. So we like to have people working in a small team. So we have people with multidisciplinary background. So we also try to work with local partners. So sometimes we work with local NGOs, sometimes we work with the local communities, sometimes we work with the local universities. So in this photo, you could see we have a biologist who works for a private sector, and he comes over with us to do some biodiversity and sustainable development studies in the Malukus, which is in eastern Indonesia. And so we stay there for a few months normally. So the students could be doing their internship or placement 1 to 2 months in with one of the partners that we have on the ground. So this one we have also some partnership with restoration concessions. So this is quite a very rich biodiversity area, but there's still a lot of poor people in the region. So we're trying to understand the balance between conservation and restoration and how forest could be very productive. But again, some of the areas are very difficult. There are a lot of, like for example, here are swamp forests and things. And next, please, James, just to be able to show you that how students has to be able to to handle all these different things, because that's the reality on the ground, right? And we also visited some of the program with nurseries, and we visited some of the restoration areas. So here you see James and Beck also visiting one of the biggest pulp and paper company and how they supply some of their mills, for example. Next, please. And we work also with biodiversity and conservation organization. We have, and this one is a critical ecosystem partnership program. So students can stay there in the villages and understanding the whole system of the landscape, including biological survey, including understanding sociocultural in the area, and also trying to understand what are the different things that could be valuable for the local communities. Next, please.
So maybe now I'll thank you, Intu, and hand the ball to Terry. I think it's nice to show that we have lots of feet in multiple aspects of what it means to be forestry. And as you walk into the forestry building, it says the nice slogan on the wall: forestry, it's more than you think. And we really like that slogan. And here's Terry, just either yesterday or a couple of days ago at COP, and he'll have a few words to say about what he's been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I, like James and Beck and Intu, I've only been at UBC a relatively short time, coming up for 4 years. And I previously worked for 12 years based in Indonesia, working for the Center of International Forestry Research, really embedded in international forestry. And I had programs all over the Old World Tropics in particular, West Central Africa, Southeast Asia, a little bit in Indonesia, but engaging with the type of research that feeds into international policy processes. So really trying to make research impactful, relevant, and aligned with the trajectories of change in forestry that were sort of happening at the time. And that role has sort of shifted into my responsibilities at UBC. So this picture is from a session that we had on the fringes of the COP26 in Glasgow, presenting some of the research that we've been undertaking in tropical landscapes in Indonesia, Zambia, and Ghana. It was a really nice event, actually. It was hybrid, so there were some people online and some of us were there in person. And it really was just a chance to share, again, the practicalities of doing things in the field, and the opportunities and constraints that go with that, and how that feeds into the broader policy frameworks that are prevalent. And we've heard so much about forests from COP26. There's declarations of stopping deforestation by 2030. How that's going to happen, no one really knows, but you know, it's interesting to try and fathom these things out. And in the MIF, we touch on much of these issues, how research and development go hand in hand to influence the policy arena. I don't know if you want me to say any more, James. I think that's probably sufficient for now, maybe.
That's a great way to end it, because I think, we really haven't made that point enough, that MIF is, it's not a traditional professional program in that it's about, it's not like an MBA at all. It's more about breaking down boundaries between what is research, what is practice, and how that feeds into the broader basically systems that drive change and influence the trajectory of forest landscapes globally. So while there aren't international codified laws that we all have to adhere to as sovereign nations, we can certainly feed into processes that sway the global norms on how forests are addressed through multi-stakeholder dialogues and multinational negotiation processes. So thanks, Terry. So I think we'll move on now to sort of start answering some questions for observers of this program. So this program is designed for people that have an international interest, global citizens of environment, and people that have an interest in stewardship of forests. So it's about not necessarily technical skill sets. Nobody has to have like literacy in programming or anything like that to get into our program. We attract people from very diverse backgrounds. We've had public health experts, including people that work at Doctors Without Borders or Médecins Sans Frontières, and engineers and artists from very wide-ranging places. So if you have an interest in stewardship of forests in its broadest sense, I think you would fit into our program. But you would also have to have an interest in working with teams of diverse people to tackling these problems across different sectors. So we think that's a strength of our program, that we have such diversity, but that is, that has to be managed carefully so that we are working together to solve challenges in a coordinated way. We've attracted students that have a strong interest in conservation practice, and we do have some sort of, a lot of NGO presence in our classroom, and in addition to a lot of government presence, the people that have worked their way up through government, people that have worked their way up through NGOs, and people that have worked their way up through the private sector, and having those conversations together in the same classroom we don't call our classroom a safe space for learning, we call it a brave space for learning, because it's about getting to the heart of difficult questions and addressing those questions, sometimes in difficult ways. So the career opportunities, this is a burgeoning sphere. The international commitments to sustainability continue to proliferate, and as we hear at COP, lots more of them coming about. We're in the decade of ecosystem restoration. There's a biodiversity crisis. Everybody has an interest now in climate smarting our development. And forests are central to a lot of these issues. And we've actually published book chapters and books and papers on the ways that forests are central to some of these grand sustainability issues. There's a lot of work to do, as we've seen coming out of the COP26 commitments. Perhaps there's been criticism of the blah, 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 and there's certainly a lot of blah, blah, blah out there, but we think that closing that action gap is where the action gap is what we say the difference is between the blah, blah, blah and what's happening on the ground. We think that's the sphere of growth for our students. As I said, forests are central to issues of sustainable development. We have social equity and justice issues, transfers of rights and responsibilities to local people. That's happening at a global level. It's happening here in British Columbia very rapidly. We're at a precipice of change here in British Columbia as the government has intentions to change the tenure systems and to achieve more equitable distribution of the ways that benefits accrue from forests, not just framing forests as timber, but framing forests more through integrated sets of social, environmental, and economic values. Everybody's talking about net zero, decarbonizing our development pathways. So trees are very much a part of that future. So I think we'd also like you to know that we've been around for, I guess, 7 or so years. The current leadership, including Terry and Intu and myself, and we've only been here for about 3 years, but we do have a history of successful graduates, and we have some present students with us here today. So I just like one more time to hear from Vaishali and Abby about what they're thinking in terms of this program as it delivers any sorts of values that they think they would want going forward for their careers.
Yeah, I feel like so far I've really enjoyed my time in MIF and really appreciate the people that I've been able to learn from, which has been, very important value to me. I feel like the professors also, have an interest, not just in our success, but our passions and perspectives in international forestry and beyond. Everyone is very supportive in helping us pursue our interests and grow our knowledge in ways that make me feel confident and excited to learn and to ask questions, which really means a lot to me because I can definitely get nervous and doubt myself when I start something new. So having that support is a key value for me as well. And we've gotten a lot of chances to hang out together outside the classroom as a community and get to know each other. I'll never forget our last field trip with Terry, actually. We had this competition to see which group could pull themselves across the water on these like floating boards, and half of us got super soaked and it was great. It was a good time. So definitely value having fun with it. in the learning process. Yeah.
Yeah, and on our first day, we talked about our hopes and fears. And today I feel that there is more hope than fears. I mean, MIF is almost like a family, and the bonds that we are building will definitely last beyond the MIF. And I can at least say for our cohort that everyone is super helpful, respectful, and kind. And with these values, learning together from each other and working together as a team, I think this will last long and will be very important in our future careers. And this whole 1 year, I think it's very worthy of our experience. And I personally feel that for me, MIF fills those gaps that my previous masters could not fill in, and even my PhD might not be able to do. I mean, these experiences are different and valuable.
Thank you, Abby and Vaishali. So yeah, that famous quote of Margaret Mead's, that never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. I think that's why we commit ourselves to building such a family sense of a network, a community of practice, a community of committed practitioners to some of the global issues of sustainability and forestry. So thanks for your reflections. Yeah, so here are just a few nice quotes for some prior students that have interned at some really interesting places. And some of the internships they've really run the gamut from sort of cutting edge new enterprises like Taking Root, which establishes carbon credit schemes across South America and now getting into parts of Western Africa, but also in the global international research spheres like the World Agroforestry Center here, ICRAF. We also have had students that have interned at the big institutions like FAO. Every year we have one student at least that interns with the UNECE as they do their world timber supply sort of analysis with the FAO in Rome. So we're all about linking critical thinking to the practice on the ground so that we do take better decisions. This is a student from last year who, well, actually 2 years ago now at this point, graduated 2020. She came from China. We have had historically a lot of interest from Chinese students in our program. She really did not know much of what was going on the ground in terms of community-based forestry in China, but came from a very sort of high-level perspective, national perspective of the use of forests. But after graduating from our program, went back to work for very interesting and emerging and sort of burgeoning NGO called APFNet, where she now works at the interface between community and government, and trying to work out the best ways forward for some of the more marginalized communities and minority groups in China, and working with them on sustainable forest management. There's endless success stories from our graduates, and if you went on our website, you'd see where our students have ended up. And there isn't a one pathway that we are associated with. People have ended up in very diverse parts of the sector, well, and outside the sector. So I think now I'm going to hand over the presentation to Lee, who's going to talk a little bit about the details of how to apply and what requirements there are. Go ahead, Lee.
Thank you, James. Next slide, please. Yes, this is good. So as you've heard from James, our students come from a very diverse background, and students usually have a bachelor's degree in academic background in science, social science, or related discipline with adequate grounding in natural resource conservation and management. And the MIF program is designed for early and mid-career professionals. Next slide, please. So if you're applying from Canada and the US, generally students have a 4-year bachelor's degree with a B+ range. So at UBC, we're looking for a overall minimum admission requirement of 76%. And we look at the courses that you've taken in your 3rd and 4th year, so 300 and 400 level. These requirements are set out by the Faculty of Graduate Studies at UBC. And if you're applying from an international country, the requirements vary depending on the country you're applying from. So I highly encourage you to visit the Grad Studies webpage. There's a link there which shows under common questions. If you click on the country that you're applying from, it shows exactly what the equivalent minimum requirement is, because every country has different grading system. And also take a look at our admission webpage for MIF as well. It will give more specific requirements for the English language that we're looking for. If you're applying from a country that is non-English speaking, but the program or the university's official language was English, you can be exempt from the TOEFL and the IELTS requirement, as long as you can provide a letter from the university that states that you completed a degree from an English language institution. Next, please. Our application portal is now open, and there is an online application that you would have to submit along with an application fee. This is a non-refundable application fee. And one of the things I want to mention is that students in the past try and collect all the supporting documents before they apply. We do ask that you can do that, or you could apply first and then upload your supporting documents after you've clicked the submit button. And the reason for that is because your referees will not receive the email link to upload a reference letter for you unless you've clicked the submit button on the application. So just keep that in mind so that they have ample time to apply to write their reference letter before the deadline of March 15th. And so along with the application is you'll have to provide scanned copies of all post-secondary transcripts, and that includes schools that you've attended for exchange programs, or if you've only taken a few courses and haven't completed a degree there, we require those transcripts as well. So the first and the front and back page, so we need the grading keys as well. For reference letters, we require a minimum of 1 academic reference, and you can supply your professional references as well, but only 3 letters will be considered. And if you need to submit an English requirement test, you'll also be required to do that in the application as well. We also require supporting documents such as your resume or CV and your motivation letter of intent, as well as a questionnaire. The letter of intent is usually 1 to 2 pages, and it outlines your motivation and your goals, why you want to take this program. So it gives the committee a little bit more information about what your goals are and what your background is. Next, please. So how to apply? In the MIF webpage, there is a button that says apply now, and if you click on that link, it will take you there. The application portal is open until March 15th. So we encourage you to apply, get started a little bit early, so that it gives you ample time to upload and send in your best application and your letter of intent, and also give your referees some time to put together the references for your application as well. And the next intake will be in September next year. Spend a little bit of time, if you can, reviewing our FAQ webpage before you start your application, because it will answer many of the questions that you may have. And you're also more than welcome to email Julie or myself at forestry.cbm@ubc.ca, and I'll put that in the chat box. We're happy to also chat with you or answer any questions you may have as well. Next, please. So the tuition is currently set at about $19,000 for Canadian students and permanent residents. Tuition is a little bit higher for international students, and that's because UBC is a publicly funded university with a portion of our funding coming from the government, and also that comes from taxpayers. the tuition is also set by the faculty, not the faculty of grad studies, sorry, by the Board of Governors at UBC. And in the past, it has increased by 2 to 5% in the last few years. The tuition is payable in 3 installments, and it's usually students have to pay at the beginning of September, January, and May. And there is a non-refundable acceptance deposit of $1,000 if you decide to come to this program. And this will be applied to your tuition as well. Many students have asked in the past about if there's any scholarships or funding. And many of our research programs do have research assistantships, but this is a course-based professional program, and so it is primarily student funded. We have some merit-based awards, but there aren't that many, and you can see on the website there are some placement awards as well, but those are only for students who have already been admitted to the program, and they are only a small portion of the funding. So students are primarily responsible for the funding for this program. And in the past, there was a MasterCard scholarship and the joint Japan World Bank scholarship. Unfortunately, both these scholarships are not available at this anymore this year. Next, please.
Well, thank you so much, Lee.
You're welcome.
I think that will probably answer a lot of questions that people have. But now I'd like to open the floor so that we can have any of the participants that are with us today talk with us about anything of interest to them, ask us any questions. The other thing I might like to do is hand the floor back to Terry and Abby and Vaishali before they have to leave. They have to leave in about in a couple of minutes. If they'd like to offer any final thoughts about this program or what they've thought of today's presentation. Terry or Abby or Vaishali, do you have any sort of final thoughts about what you'd like to convey to any potential applicants?
Yeah, one thing that I try not to dwell on too much is, the poor state of the world, and we've heard some fairly grim statistics read out this week at COP. And I think but the other side of that is that on the fringes of COP, there were lots of protests, lots of activism, lots of enthusiasm for change. And I think that there's a lot of hope still out there. And I think that's something that's conveyed, hopefully, in the MIF. And especially for young professionals starting out in their career, it's important to have that hope and aspire to make the change the world needs. And I think that's reflected in the MIF very much.
Yeah, I fully agree. And that perhaps that prompts Vaishali and Abby on whether they're hopeful and whether the MIF addresses some of that need to be hopeful in light of the urgency of the world's systems.
Yeah, I mean, what Terry said reminds me of one of our discussions in the class, that what MIF is doing. I mean, programs such as MIF is basically about making peace and avoiding world wars. So yeah, I mean, we might not be able to make big changes in the world and may not be able to solve grand problems, but I hope that the communities we end up working with and those landscapes that we will work in future, we might be able to contribute in a better way after going through MIF.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Vaishali. Abby?
I think the MIF has given me, balanced a lot of that fear with a lot of hope, seeing that there are so many people, the students and the professors who are still passionate and still engaged and, kind of don't see their time as, just a way to spend, being negative or wallowing in that kind of fear, because that's not a luxury that many people have. And so we try to step up and work with what we have and with the people around us, constantly learning in order to stay positive and have a good time and hopefully make some change.
Well, thank you so much, Abby, Vaishali, and Terry. I know you have to now run to class. They are starting class, Terry's natural resource planning course that starts in 5 minutes, but Terry's running that from London. So good luck. Normally it's in person, but we do get this luxury of being digitally connected nowadays. So Thanks very much, Terry, Abby, and Vaishali, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you, James.
Yes,
Okay.
all the best.
Bye.
And now Into or Beck, do you have any final thoughts before we open up to questions?
I guess it is quite an interesting discussion already, but I just would like to add that I'm hoping that by passing through the MIF, then again, as the two students were saying, we are creating a sort of like a network of practitioners, right? And people who will be sort of linked to all this, solving all these different problems in the world, even though we're going to be only doing a little bit of it, but hopefully will grow, isn't it? It's like a snowball effect. And in the future that people will be able to have a better capability of taking better decisions. So hopefully this program will be useful for different people from different sector and different discipline, and will be working from their home country and linking up with all the other international students that they were in the same classrooms before, right? At UBC. So it's creating also a family or a network of people who would understand the different dynamic of the landscapes everywhere around the world.
Yeah. And Beck, do you have any thoughts?
I could just speak from my perspective. Whilst I really enjoy teaching and the forest governance and policy, I'm also very fortunate that I get to take part in some of the classes and join the seminars and meet the visiting guests throughout the semester. So as a researcher working on these issues in maybe sort of a landscape or local way, I really do appreciate having that time with the students and the professors and the visiting guests to sit back and reflect on, what are these important questions that I'm trying to answer, but how do they relate to different issues and challenges that are happening across the world? So I guess I really enjoy this course as a teacher, but as a mentor, as someone who gets to have fun with the students after class and during class, but also as a researcher learning from everyone who joins. So yeah, I'm grateful for that opportunity too. Thanks.
Thanks, Beck. Thanks, Into. So I do see a few questions here in the chat that I could start to address. I guess, yes, we understand that the funding is a stumbling block for many applicants. And it is a shame that the World Bank, I guess the times are tough in world financial systems now, so that World Bank has pulled out their funding this year. But there are probably, interesting funding mechanisms you can explore, whether through the private sector or whether through your own host sort of bilateral agreements between Canada and whatever countries you're living in. Those have worked for some students in the past. So be resourceful and explore those options. And if you're really keen, then we are, at your disposal to also do some research into your particular arrangements. But as far as specific questions for, I see Mercy here has a question about the supervisors.
I can take that one. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lee. Yeah.
So they're not required, as I understand, because this is not a research program. So students are not expected to find a research supervisor when they apply. And in terms of the references, students cannot upload the references on behalf of the referee. So the referees will have to upload their letter themselves, and make sure you don't use their personal emails. It has to be an institutional email. And so if they cannot upload it, they can also mail it in directly to our office in a sealed envelope, signing the back of the envelope as well. And for the summary of results of the official transcript, it has to be an official transcript. So it cannot be a printout from your student account. It has to be an official transcript when you apply. And if it's from a UBC, you will not need to supply any UBC transcripts. We have access to that.
Great, thanks, Lee. So we have a set of some preset questions that we collected prior to this to this session, and I can try to answer some of those now too, because they might be of interest to other people. One question was, I've already completed a PhD in forestry with a majors in silviculture, and started working immediately without space in between that education and that and their professional life. Are they still of interest to a program like ours? Are they eligible? Absolutely. So there aren't our program is we understand difficulties with academia now, and as people go into PhDs, it's often about specialization. Our program is about critically taking a step back and understanding the way that the various specialized fields come together to solve problems. So we think that specialization is necessary, but also to some extent, without a critical understanding of how it fits together into a bigger picture, might not lead us strategically forward in any better direction for governance or solving problems. So there are.
Maybe I can add also, James, and because it's true that some of our students, isn't it? They see that the importance of natural resources. For example, we had students who are from public health, for example, who understand that natural resources and food is a main problem, right? And it all links to environment, for example, and that could be. So the MIF could be a good way of understanding the whole system, right? And then there are engineers or agriculture specialists who are working in their landscape, and then suddenly they realize that it's actually linked to other sector, right? And so I guess the MIF could give this interesting perspective from another point of view, right? So yeah.
Yeah. I would also add to that there's something that floats around on social media, and it's this picture of a couple of dots, and dots might be bits of data, and the moment you start connecting those dots, then you start to understand the data. But the moment you understand the way that the dots form different patterns and learn how those patterns work, that's really wisdom. And we think that that's what we're about, understanding the ways that we connect the dots from different disciplines, different specialties, and different all the different compartmentalized ways of looking at things. So we don't discount anybody's background. We think that the diversity is a strength, and I've had such a nice, enriching experience because of our diversity.
Exactly.
And other questions? I think, I don't see anything else that we sort of haven't addressed here. Are there any people in this group that would like to, interject or ask a question? If not, we're sort of running right against we're 1 minute to close. So that's pretty good timing, I think. If nobody has any other questions, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today, and everybody that might view this on their own time. Because we know that we're all getting Zoom fatigue and digital screen time fatigue through the last 2 years of COVID, and we acknowledge that, and we apologize for making you sit in front of another screen, but we hope this was enriching for you, and it's certainly enriching for us to hear and engage with people that have an interest in the same interest that we do. So I'd like to also thank Fabian and Natasha for getting this organized for us today, and all of our panel discussants that are with us. So Intu and Rebecca are still here, but the others have left, and Lee's here. I can't see everybody's picture, but thank you so much for joining us today. And I guess I can call this to a close, and this link will be uploaded. But you can follow us here. There are questions, if you have questions, to follow these links. The application deadline for September 22 intake is March 15th. We are a rolling admissions program. So just keep in mind that that's the final deadline, March 15th. Please learn more about our program at these websites. And please follow us on social media. We have our students take control of this. So they're leading the way that our program is presented, not us. So it's not biased by our point of view. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you are healthy and doing well in your respective locations. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to see you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.